Okay.
I'm not hearing you now. I lost your sound now.
How about now?
Yeah, I got you again now. You're
All
back.
right, loud and clear.
No, you're gone again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. Now you're
All
back.
righty. So again, Harry, thanks for hopping on and on today's episode of African Football Unfiltered, fourth episode. And good morning, everyone, viewers, and thanks for tuning in today's episode as well. So we welcome another African football specialist in Harry Valley, originally from the UK. So he's a very good friend and a special guest today for us. And he's former African scout for KAA Gent from Belgium, and he's now FIFA talent ID specialist, and we'll be unpacking very powerful topics today. So pretty much, um, we would want to cover as much as possible during this episode, and hopefully, we come across very informative and insightful for our viewers. So I'll say, Harry, I'll hand it over to you. Let me know, you know, let the viewers know who you are, and then we can start on with it.
Very good. Well, yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be on. So as you said, my name is Harry Varley. I've been in football now for professional football for 15 years, and working between Africa and the Caribbean for the last decade. Initially, I was a coach, so I've coached on 5 different continents. Been a technical director, head of coaching, head of women's football in the Caribbean as well. And then 2 years ago, I moved from coaching. I was at Right to Dream. That was my last coaching role. I moved over to recruitment with Gent, and now with the 2 projects that I'm doing at the moment, which is with FIFA and their TDS program, and then a program that I have here in Gambia.
All right. Again, Harry, 15 years in professional football, and having been around 5 continents, that definitely, um, I'm sure you've definitely garnered a wealth of experience, and some of that I'm sure we will not be able to cover entirely in this episode, obviously, but we would appreciate and they would be very happy to learn from the experiences that you've obviously garnered in the past years of you being in professional football, especially um, within the African continent. But before we start off, Harry, has is there like any similarities between football in the continent of Africa and and the football in the continent of around the Caribbean?
I don't think so. I think honestly, well, I mean, I guess there are similarities in terms of lack of structure, and there are similar issues in terms of pathways. But I would say that the football culture in Africa is so much stronger. The Caribbean tends to be more towards athletics and cricket because they have a history of success, and it's something that I've seen even within Africa. If you compare West Africa to East Africa, because there is more of a track record of success of players going out of West Africa, there is more of a pipeline of talent. Whereas there is a similar level of talent in Uganda and these countries, but because they don't have the same reputation, they don't have the same visibility, then there's not that the same kind of development in football. So yes, I think that's one of the biggest differences. Is if you're in Africa, then you go to any park, any street, and kids are playing football 24 hours a day, whereas the Caribbean, it's not always the case. Some countries, yes, but not as much.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think I tend to agree with that. Culturally, I don't think we're extremely far off of the continent and of the Caribbeans. And as you would know, history obviously, you know, definitely expounds on how we pretty much or basically are the same people, etc.
For
So,
sure.
first question today would be, Harry, being in the continent of Africa with years of coaching and scouting experience, excuse me. What would you say is the changing face of African football and its new opportunities right now?
Well, I think the speed at which the face of football is changing here is the thing that surprised me. I mean, I joined Ghent 2 years ago, and developed a proposal with the head of recruitment at the time, and we had a kind of timeline on how quickly we thought things would move, and we were miles off, honestly, because
Hmm.
things are moving very quickly. And I would say that's partly because the value in other markets is not there anymore. If you're going to South America, or if you're going to other parts of the world, player values are getting higher and higher, and so clubs with limited resources are much more likely to be able to find value in Africa. There's also an abundance of talent, which is something that we can address. But for me, it's not even being we're not even starting to see how much talent is available, how much quality players could be moving outside of Africa because of various different factors. But even without that, even with the very random and kind of ad hoc approach to talent development, there's still an abundance. So for many clubs, that should be a big part of their football and their business model, is finding great value and great quality to supplement what they have with their homegrown players. And I think the thing that surprised me about the speed at which things are changing is even like Premier League teams now are starting to really buy into the idea of having a specific approach towards African football, and I thought that would not be the case for another 5 to 10 years. But if you see like the recent under-17 tournament, there are scouts from many of the Premier League clubs and clubs across Europe. So there is definitely a massive push towards better recruitment, more comprehensive recruitment in Africa.
Hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree. And yeah, touching on that last point, most definitely, at the end of the day, football is still football, and it's always going to be business, and it's going to stay that way for a very long time. And are we losing touch from football being more just an entertaining sport? I would say probably a little bit. There's been a little bit of shift, but the hard fact remains that it's more business now than it was just like pure entertainment, and something that probably people will be looking forward to and get the actual excitement out of and out of the sport. But again, nonetheless, um, your point that a lot of Premier League clubs are actually even considering um, expanding operations to Africa, whether it's scouting operations, whether it's setting up meaningful collaborations or strategical partnerships. Um, this is actually on the rise, and obviously 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I would say it was a bit difficult, and obviously Premier League clubs have the resources to they would have the resource to at least and can afford to wait for a player to get into Europe before making that investment to bring them over. And I would say the introduction of the wild cards in the Premier League and obviously the Championship clubs have made this have made the situation for a lot of Premier League clubs very flexible, where they
Hmm.
can actually use these cards and then use it to bring in players that would probably not even meet the mandatory requirements that were
So
set before. And then, so I'll say it's some sort of a win-win now for obviously the Premier League clubs, and at the same time the African clubs. Win for the Premier League clubs, meaning they don't have to wait for these players to move to Europe, and have their values like amplified before they can actually spend fortunes on them. So instead, they can directly recruit these players and have them maybe um, placed at other clubs in Europe just to build that European experience before they can actually bring them in.
for
Again,
sure.
that also brings about the multi-club ownership that a lot of clubs are actually getting their hands on. Just to ensure that there's at least a bit of a price control, or them not paying too much of a fortune to bring in like a talent, for example, from Africa or South America. And so pretty much, I'm sure we'll dive deeper into that, and just thought to touch on that point for you. And so, what do you think as far as talent is concerned? You've mentioned that there's still a massive and a huge talent pool in Africa, and you would maybe say from your statement, not exactly as you mentioned it, but not even the surface have been scratched as far as the talent pool in Africa is concerned. And would you say, would you just reconfirm that? And how much do you think will be farmed out of Africa, probably say 10 years from now? Do you see it tripling, doubling, quadrupling, or do you see it probably even you know getting 10 times higher? Than at least at the rate at which we're going right now.
Well, I think it's a crucial point in development of African football, honestly, because for many years, the majority of the countries and clubs within it were complaining about visibility, were complaining about exposure,
Yeah.
um, and opportunities and pathways and all these other key words. Well, not to say that those things are easy now, but there is a big change and there is much more opportunity. There are scouts and agents coming down to African countries on a weekly basis, holding showcases. There is much greater exposure and opportunity. At the same time, that's now kind of exposing whether the structures are actually genuinely in place in the clubs and organizations that have been claiming to be doing what they've been doing.
Mhm.
So I think right now there is just about the right amount of demand from clubs in Europe and the rest of the world to the supply, but quite quickly that's going to go the other way because honestly, there are not enough clubs and academies who are genuinely making the investment in development. They are picking players late. They are not taking them early enough and taking their time to develop them.
Mhm.
There is a huge problem in terms of talent identification. One of the reasons that I'm doing the role I'm doing for FIFA is because many people complain about the level of coaching in Africa, which is its own legitimate problem. But talent identification is the most serious problem. And for the TDS program to work for FIFA, they need to make sure that the right players are being recruited at early ages to then be the bedrock of future national teams. There is no culture, as far as I've seen, in the 24 countries that I've traveled to, of talent identification and scouting as a serious profession and something that's respected by clubs, even the ones who have very big reputations. Knowing the amount of quality players that you can find within a country, I don't think there is one academy outside of JMG that deliver the amount of players that they should if they were properly investing in their identification procedures and staff.
I agree, and I would say I 100% agree with what you've said, and I think scouts are definitely the most underrated um, people as far as football is concerned as well. It's not just in Africa; it's probably it's everywhere, and
For sure, it's a
I
global problem.
think
Yeah,
yeah, it's more like a global issue than probably just like restricted to maybe just one region, and they are like massive game changers because I think they spend more time on the ground and moving around and then try to find this special um, gem that would that would want to be claimed by a club probably say 3, 4 years down the line, and 9 times out of 10 they don't get the credit they deserve and maybe not even compensated as they should be. And
yeah, no
again,
doubt.
yeah, so again, which is one of the things I had a chat with a colleague of mine that probably wanted to get into the scouting business, has a very good eye for talent, and so this was one of the reasons that he brought up, that they are almost very much undercompensated, and probably what could be a way out for them. But obviously, this is a topic for another day. And
Yeah.
just
Well, I think there's also, in addition to that, because like you say, that's a global problem. Scouts are ripped off
yeah,
in every part of the world, and the reward for the recruitment department, given how important they are to the overall success of a club, and especially the business model of a club, it will never be commensurate. It will never be correct. It's
absolutely,
always more funds are given towards the technical side of things, when actually it's recruitment that is the key to any successful program if you do your research.
I
But
agree.
for me, the broader issue, and the one that's probably more specific to Africa as a continent, is
Mhm.
that there is a profile of player that works for the leagues here, for
Yeah,
the style and focus of the leagues, which often, almost all the time, I would say, isn't the type of profile of player that can go and have a top career in Europe. There is a very different set of physical and technical characteristics
yeah,
that players in the leagues, and you'll see that's why most of the leagues in Africa have very poor attendances, because
yeah,
the level of the football is not high. It's not an engaging and entertaining style, and the best players are not being given their chance. It's older players, more robust players. So the issue for me is more that the identification of young players, and especially young players when they're in their most important development states, is
mhm,
one, not being done. There's nobody going around looking at 9 and 10-year-olds
mhm,
in almost all of the countries. That age category is just left to do its own thing, when it should be that academies, serious academies, and clubs should be monitoring those players and then bringing them into structured environments to support their development.
mhm,
But they're also just not being seen in the different countries that I've traveled to with the FIFA TDS program. The scouts that we're working with, the identification departments, are picking players for the local leagues. They're picking for that style of player,
yeah,
and they're missing out on the more high potential ones.
mhm,
And I think that is what will create this bottleneck, where when the demand increases from especially the higher level clubs, when you
mhm,
have the likes of Chelsea and Barcelona and these clubs coming down here, they are looking for the best of the best. And if they're not being identified early and helped along their development pathway, then you're going to miss the opportunity, because they're going to come for a period of time, and then they're going to say there's not the quality that we need here, and then they'll go back and look at other markets.
Again, very important point that you've touched on, that I think a lot of people, and I would say if stakeholders, still fail to actually get the whole idea of, right? You mentioned JMG Academy in Mali. We will get into that a little bit, and obviously, we would probably just want you to run us through your experiences and thoughts about the academy. But what you've just said, I think, is what every single person that advocates and advocates for football development would, and that knows and understand football development, would always pinpoint. And this is one. I think a lot of them don't have the understanding of knowing that there are certain type of players that are just well fit for the leagues that, or the local leagues that they play in, and there's actually those that are actually of high potential, that have at least the technical ability, um, they have the technical ability and potential to actually succeed in Europe, or at least get that opportunity, to make that transition and develop even faster and become even bigger, valuable players in Europe than they do. So some of these players are actually stripped off of, and stripped off of opportunities. I will give you an example. I would not mention the club in Gambia. So my academy, I was going to acquire a share in one of the top division clubs. So pretty much, there's this kid that I brought in. I proposed to the coach. I was like, look, he's got 5 times more potential than any player in any player that you have in this club. He's just 18. Give him a chance, and maybe see how it works. Obviously, not trying to influence his work by any means, but apparently, he didn't think he was old enough for the league. So I was like, okay, then that's fine. So I kept this kid. 6 months later, prepped him, developed him, and we got him to Denmark, to FC Midtjylland. 3 weeks later, we got him a contract. He signed a professional contract with FC Midtjylland. And imagine, this was the kid that was said, we don't think he would be good enough, or probably better than the striker that we had. And so it's things like this. And like I said, I don't want to go too much into detail, because before it becomes too obvious. But there's a lot of this that's happening, and it only takes someone with like a visionary level expertise to understand and see and note these things, as far as football development is concerned, and also having to differentiate what players you need to just sustain your club in the local leagues, and those that are actually meant to be the ones that get that pathway to the highest levels.
Well, and it comes down to having a clear vision for the club or organization, and this is often the biggest issue. Is the focus is on winning, even though if you're to win your local competition, rarely will it be enough money to cover the cost of running the club.
Yeah.
So you're not doing it with any clear, sustainable approach. So it tends to be a one-man band, somebody who owns the club, and it tends to be an ego thing.
Mhm.
And it's also done with a lack of understanding of what profile of player is being looked at and the timeline of that player. So, I mean, I spent a year traveling around, well, I guess 18 months traveling around with Gent, and then for this project, going to showcases in many countries. And the same conversation was needed to be had every time, because I asked them, do you have any idea what type of player my club is looking for? You've invited me to come here, but have you done any research about what type of player we're looking for?
Mhm.
And have you then done the identification to make sure that you have those players in your program? And it was never the case. There was never any real understanding. So we would go round and round in circles. And additionally, now I would say for many of the leagues and many of the clubs that are coming down to do recruitment from Africa, they are not looking to take a 19 or 20-year-old. They're looking to find a 16 or 17-year-old, have
Mhm.
them come on trial before their 18th birthday and be ready to join the club at 18. So if
Correct.
you are of the mindset as a club, that your players aren't ready until 18, 19, you've already missed the window. You're
100%.
already misunderstanding
100%.
the amount of scouts that were at the recent U17 AFCON is an example of what age category they're looking at. And because a lot of the clubs are finding that many of those players were already signed by clubs in Scandinavia and other locations, they will start looking even younger. Maybe they'll start looking at 15, 14.
15, yeah, I was going to say that, yeah.
Of course. And because that is the model in Europe. And so likewise, it will follow in this direction. So if you are a club in the first division here in Gambia or in Ghana or wherever, and you are trying to win by having physically robust players who can withstand the training methods and the pitches and everything else, then of course a 15, 16-year-old is not going to be able to play. And therefore you are not going to be able to produce the type of player that clubs in Europe are looking for. So that is, for me, as important an issue as anything else in this changing face of African football.
Yeah, well, again, I think being on the same page, I think I agree 110%. And you mentioned GMG Academy. Can you tell us a little bit about what about the professionalism and how and why you think they're probably one of the academies, if not the academy, that's doing things the best possible and the right way? And do you think it is the best academy in Africa at the moment, or do we still see Right to Dream at the top of it?
I mean, they are the best academy in Africa now, and they have been for the last 30 years. So their story begins in Ivory Coast in 1994. And from that first crop of players, they produced the Toure brothers, they produced the Kalou brothers, they produced Didier Zakora, Arthur Boka, Bakary Kone, Aruna
Were they
Dindan.
not from Azek? Is
Well, it was a
Azek?
collaboration between JMG and ASEC. And if you
Okay.
look now at the quality and the consistency of players that ASEC produce is not the same as when they were in partnership with JMG. ASEC still do a good job, but it's nowhere near the level and consistency that they previously produced. So they were initially in Ivory Coast. Then there was a difference of opinion or a difference of vision, which led to JMG, Jean-Marc Gilou. That's where the name comes from. He left and went to Mali. And so he created the academy in Mali, which has produced the likes of Yves Bissouma and Haidara. And this last crop of, firstly, the under-20s, Sekou Kone and Makalu. And now, if you looked at the recent Mali under-17 team, Dembele, for me, is one of the most exciting talents that's come out of Africa in 20 years. And he's another product of the JMG system. So they suffer because they don't self-promote the way that Right to Dream self-promote. But if you were to look at the numbers, there's not even any comparison. The level and number of players that they produce compared, it's not. I mean, yeah, there's no comparison in any way. And for me, they are a perfect model because they focus on the technical aspects. They do recruitment not on physical profiling, but based on technical aspects of the players. They take them when they're 10, 11 years old, and they invest time in preparing them as footballers and give faith that when they get to the end of the development process, they will be able to show their quality, and they invariably do. And I find that most of the other academies are focusing more on physical profiles, and they are doing less on the actual investment of developing football players. And so that's why the level of players that come out is good, but not great, when it should be. A country like Nigeria has no excuse for not producing as many players as Brazil. There's literally no excuse for it. There's the same physical profile of players. Like the best players from Brazil are originally African descent. So there is no reason, if you ask me, why Congo can't produce hundreds of players every year. Nigeria, there are huge countries that have, for me, totally underperformed in terms of how many top players they're producing. And I think the thing that shows me more than anything now is you see the explosion of talent of African diaspora players in England, France,
Yeah.
around Europe. It shows you that with the right environment, the right encouragement, that's how great African players can be. But if you leave them here in Africa, it's a total random exercise in who comes through and who doesn't. There is no guarantee for me that Lamine Yamal, growing up in Equatorial Guinea, would definitely come through at the level he has.
I,
Literally, there's no proof that that could be the case.
mm, I agree. Again, I think that explains it. Like I said, very important phrase, word, self promote. So JMG doesn't. The numbers are there to definitely speak for itself, and then you know do the promotion of the academy's level. And so pretty much, let's now maybe look at visibility of African players. So what would you say is the price of visibility for African players in today's market?
So I kind of touched on it already. So part of it is before there was always a convenient excuse, so there wasn't visibility. That was always a reason why players weren't going out, etc., etc. So now there is visibility. You have multiple video platforms where many of the clubs and academies can showcase their players,
Mm-hmm.
and there are scouts coming for showcases regularly, and they're coming for all of the regional and AFCON youth tournaments. So that convenient excuse is not there anymore. It's for me. I have many players reach out to me from Ghana, from Nigeria, from Senegal, saying that there's no one coming to watch them. And for me, I don't buy that
Mm-hmm.
because there is a different scout coming every week. So I think now that the initial price of visibility is that it will expose if clubs are doing things the right way or not. Clubs that claim that they are investing in young players and
Mm-hmm.
bringing them through, well, now we'll see. We'll see if that's true. If they're really doing the work to go out and identify the best players in the country
Mm-hmm.
at under 13, under 11, and bring them in and prepare them so that they are ready. Because, like we said, now the expectation is at 15 and 16, you
Mm-hmm.
are ready to go and have a trial in Europe or potentially be signed on a pre-contract. So for me, that's the initial price of visibility. Is there's no more hiding behind that excuse.
Mm. Again, once again, I agreed. When I started my academy about 5 years ago, um, literally that same year, um, visibility was the most important thing for me. So obviously, maybe I would probably have had that because maybe I've spent some time in Europe, and did a lot of that. So I bought I that was that I introduced the video camera to Gambia. I brought it in. I was actually the first person to bring in the video camera, and started making recording as much games as possible. Go to like league games, and we've never been short of ensuring that our players were actually visible to potential agents or partner agents and clubs as well, or scouts, etc. So we've actually had that, and it had actually helped us place these players because we had footages to show for those players, and it was not as if when we got asked where is the footage or what can we see about this player, we didn't really have anything to show for it. So the kid that we transferred to Midtjylland, the 3 or 4 players that we transferred to, we moved to Lokomotiva Zagreb, all in the past 3 4 years. These were all as a result of us being able to provide and give something out. And I don't know if you noticed, but up until maybe even a year and a half ago, you wouldn't be able to watch like an actual video footage of a Gambian football league game because of the way it's recorded. Even if it's recorded, it's not recorded well.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Either
yeah, for sure.
the camera position is not great. So at some point, I actually this season I stopped using the video camera because it was not really getting the angles the way I would want them. But again, I would say we keep improving, and it's a step by step process. And so what I tend to do now is that next season we're gonna probably try to have few more cameras on all of our games that can capture all the angles and then record it at a higher elevation, from an elevated point. That way we're able to like get like an actual view of the games rather than just have it recorded just for the sake of having someone be there to record it. So again, very crucial. And I think clubs or stakeholders or people that are actually trying to get these players out should also understand how decision makers in football, recruitment, etc., work and operate, and understand these guys barely have time to even look at a video that's probably more than what that's not even recorded from the jump, because the moment they see that these angles are not even well recorded, it's not worth their time. Because and I don't I mean, I'm not blaming them for that. I'm more looking at it from a point where I feel like these people already are overwhelmed with a lot of like footages, etc. So
Look, I'm very critical of European clubs and their approach to recruitment in African football. I'm very vocal on LinkedIn and other platforms.
mhm.
I will never, I will never stop saying that they should do better.
They should
But
definitely do better.
the
110.
reality is the reality. If you
Yeah.
are a club in Africa, you can cry about it and you can do all of that, or you can understand, like you say, they have limited time, they have
Mhm.
limited interest, to be honest.
Right.
So you have to catch their attention. So by doing the things that you have in your power and your control, and one of these things, once you have the visibility, is making sure you have the quality of player, because there are too many clubs that don't have the quality of player, and their
Right.
complaint is about visibility. And for too
Mhm.
long, they've been saying nobody's come to watch. And then when you do go and watch, the quality is not
It's
high
not
enough.
worth your time. Yeah.
So for me, it's like there is now a price to that. You are being watched, and it happens for a short period of time. Gambia right now is on everybody's lips because of Kuba Minte, because of Nicholas Jackson, because of some of the other boys who are doing very well in Scandinavia and other leagues. But if scouts come here for 2 or 3 trips and they find there's no quality in the league, which is a big risk at the moment, because there hasn't been enough infrastructure below what the clubs do at first team level, then they'll go elsewhere. Somewhere else will become the next hot ticket. They'll go to Cape Verde, or they'll go to Mali, or there is a small window of time where everybody will go to one place, and you have to be ready to deliver. And I think that is one of the additional prices of visibility.
I agree. I agree. Again, 110%. Um, European clubs should definitely do better. But like you said, there's almost very little interest in the players that we're trying to bring in, anyways. And secondly, we need to do better as well, and then just live up to the realisticness of exactly how things work. So pretty much, again, there's no need for us to play the blame game. We just have to do things the right way and get it over with. And so obviously there's us not providing enough data on players, which maybe or clubs are actually accustomed to when it comes to like getting or even building an interest in a certain type of player. Because if there's not enough data, that's how every club is now almost programmed.
Of
And
course.
obviously for clubs that are heavy on recruiting from Africa, they are not looking at this as a total expectation from the onset, but they are probably thinking at least we can get like a video footage that makes sense for us to even want to consider
Sure. And
people.
look, this is the final point of the topic in terms of the price of visibility is, as with many other things that happen in Africa, that part of the production of a player is being outsourced. It's being outsourced to Eyeball, to Y
Eyeball, yeah.
Scout, to all of these. Well, there is a cost of doing business if you do that. If you as a club are not professional enough to record your matches, produce statistics, produce the data, you let somebody else do it, you shouldn't be surprised when they want to take a piece of the pie. And I know there's a
Absolutely.
big debate going on about one of
Alpha
the youth
Scout.
leagues going on
Mm.
in Gambia at the moment, but it's how things work in the real world. No, if you don't do things yourself, somebody else is going to say, well, I'm not going to do it for free. And then that's why you have now this price of visibility.
Mhm. Okay. Well, again, I think that makes sense, and that ultimately answers the that part of it. So, how are you? So, what are your thoughts on the art and science of talent identification across the continent of Africa?
Well, look, there is, again, a reason why the program that I'm doing for FIFA is being put in place. There's a reason why Arsene Wenger has proposed that in every country in Africa, there needs to be a national training center similar to Clairefontaine or JMG, for example, because those elements of identification, and then once the players have been identified, the later development of those players is not being done well enough. It is not being done at the right age category, and it's not being done with the right expertise. There are, and part of my role with Gent and with the project I'm doing now is identifying the people who are experts in scouting, whether they've had any training or not. And I get this a lot. A lot of young scouts come to me. A lot of people reach out to me asking about scouting qualifications and scouting courses. Well, honestly, I've never come across a scouting course that's of
Mm-hmm.
any use, to be honest. I think it's a very specialist skill that takes a unique type of personality, somebody that's willing to go and do a 10-hour trip into the village and wait around and watch a lot of games at very, very quality that can be quite difficult to decipher what the level of a player is. Not everybody wants to do that. In fact, most people don't want to do that. So part of it is a character thing. Are you going around and finding the right type of people, the people that are beyond dedicated to football and interested in watching unglamorous football that isn't populated at the highest leagues and levels. Because I think even with the increased visibility, there is still at the younger levels a very unstructured environment for the development of a football player. So if you're trying to find the best players in the country, you cannot just go to the leagues and competitions. You have to go to Navatan, you have to go to different environments where players are playing, and you will then find these kind of uncut gems.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, absolutely agreed. I'll ask you a very critical question, and not even critical. I want this is just a question that probably needs an answer, and I think a lot of people should definitely um, want to hear this as far as football is concerned. In Africa, a player, let's say probably 23, actually 23 years of age, says he's 18, 17, or 18. Can you expound on one, the risk they face when they get to Europe? How does that impact their development? And why is that not the future?
Well, so there's multiple parts to the story. I mean, part of it is that 23-year-old who's saying they're 18
Hmm.
is taking the opportunity away from somebody who's actually 18 to be in a youth national team, for example, and get the exposure that they should be getting. For them personally, there is a huge psychological and social difference in somebody who's 23 in Africa and somebody who's 18 in Africa. The level of pressure that they are under from their family to support and contribute
Hmm.
is a different world. So that's obviously going to influence how they approach their football career. They're going to be much more likely to make impulsive choices because they have a timeline that isn't what you would expect from an 18-year-old. They have a necessity to go and make money and to start doing something with their career. So from a physical point of view, I'm less confident to talk about it because I think there are players who've been out playing much past what sports science would say is their cutoff point and still performing at the highest level. So I think there's a lot of conversation that should be had around what the capacity of players from Africa is and how long they can play for, because it seems to be much different than European players. But for me, it's more on the social side. It's more that a 23-year-old or a 25-year-old or a 27-year-old, I've seen very, very big differences in real age to football age. They are not in the same amount of time to be able to focus on their development. It's not the same as taking a young kid who, like in Europe, has much more time to develop and go and play in a lower league in Europe and move their way up. Otherwise, then they're going to be much more easily influenced to go to somewhere where the money is good to begin with. And obviously, those leagues tend not to be leagues that then are good stepping stones into the higher levels of European football. So I think for me that would be the main issue if you're talking about it from a European club side of things, about why you need to be very, very clear about the age of the player, and for the players themselves, it's really important that they need to start focusing on their football early, and the clubs themselves are the ones responsible for that, clubs and federations, because there's almost no country that I've traveled to in Africa where there are genuine competitions for under 11s and under 13s. They're just not going on. So the players have to wait until they're much older, and then that's when the idea of changing your passport makes more sense, because you haven't been given the attention and focus you should have when you were the right age.
All right, again, very insightful. And Harry, critical question again. Do you think clubs in Europe obviously can't prove the player's age, obviously, especially in a case where the player has presented like an actual passport of their age? But do you think clubs in Europe as well tend to overlook um, these um, these situations and issues, and just go along with it because they believe this play can probably be like a short-term fix, and maybe just transform and then sell them out and make profit out of it, probably within at least within a year and a half, and then whatever happens in the future they don't really care.
Exactly. That is the business model. It comes back to what we said before. There is a lack of interest, there's a lack of care for African players in general. If you're an African player, most of the time, you will not be transferred directly. You will be asked to go on trial. You or your agent will be asked to pay for the cost of that trial.
Mhm.
It's a different approach than they would take with any other continent. So there is already a bias against African players, and there is a model that's built around see how they do. We go in there because they're cheap anyway. So then the initial entry point is we can make a mistake because we're not spending very much money. And if they do well, then we can move them on and there's somebody else's problem. So yeah, for me, it's a whole different approach. I talk constantly about clubs from Europe going to the under 17, under 20 tournaments, because the processes for selecting national teams are not transparent and they're not fair. So it's very unlikely that you'll have the best players there anyway. But it's also just a reflection that European clubs are not taking the process seriously. They wouldn't be doing that in Europe. They have scouts watching 7, 8, 9 year olds in Europe. So what is the difference in Africa? If you really care about the quality and getting the best, why are you not using the same approach that you do in your continent down here? You should have been watching that player when by the time they reached the under 17 national team, you should have been watching them for 6, 7 years already. They should be, you should know every detail about them if you're really interested in your investment and doing things correctly.
I agree, 100%. Well said. You couldn't have said it better, Harry. And so another one would be so right now, like you said, there always has to be like a specific pathway that every African player has to go through, right? And which is they have to go through trials first, and then there's just probably a whole lot of other things that they would try to impose, obviously, because there's just not enough interest when it comes to African player, and you just have to be special, be like an instant fix, and probably someone that's gonna come in and then probably at the most 1 year, 1.5 year, you should be out of the club, and then bring them some money. So you would be more like a tool they would use to convert into money to obviously keep their club sustainable. So how do clubs and academies in Africa switch into being so productive that they don't have to have players go through trials anymore? What would it take? What has to be done?
Well, we talked earlier about right to dream. So half of it is about your presentation. If you tell the story to the world that you're doing something, whether you're doing it or you're not doing it, eventually the world will believe you. So it's then for you to back that up with delivering the players on top of it. So for a lot of clubs, they don't have a website, they don't have the basic things that would give them like a professional presentation. There was numerous examples of people that have reached out to me for opportunities for players. I will go through my contact list, find an opportunity for them, and then once we try to start the process, the player doesn't have a passport. They don't have the paperwork in place. So again, if you as a club, firstly, should know your best players. Many showcases I go to, I'll say, "Who's your best player?" And I say, "We have 20." I
Yeah.
say, "You definitely don't. You definitely don't have 20 best
Yeah,
players.
at the
Who is
most,
your best? If you don't know who your best player is, we
yeah.
have a big problem." So for me, if you don't know who your best two or three are, you haven't identified what they're good at and what league they are appropriate for, or the best market for them, and
Mhm.
then prepared, making sure that you know the visa process, because most clubs in Europe aren't bothered about the visa process. It's a problem for them. It's something that there is a big hassle. If you yourself don't know how to do it and can advise them, you're already giving yourself a massive disadvantage, because they might just give up and say it's too much effort. We don't want to partake. So from a club's point of view, you need to have video in place, documents in place, understanding of visa processes, because some of them are very complicated. For one particular country, if you don't have an embassy in your country in Africa, you might have to travel the whole other side of the continent. It can be very expensive, it can be very time consuming, and very difficult. So again, as a club, it's probably best for you to do some identification of which embassies and which visa processes might be easiest for your players to go through for their initial move. That might make it much more viable for you to send out multiple players. And I think those are just a couple of examples of things that clubs can do to start the process. In the end, though, it will come down to, do you have good enough and high quality enough players on a regular basis? If I come to your academy and one time you have a good player, likely you're not going to get a very good deal, because you're going to have to send a player on trial, and we're, as a club, are going to say you don't really have a reputation, so here's some small money. If we come back next year and you have two more players, and we come back for the next 5 years and you continue to have the best players, you then get yourself leverage and you get yourself in a position where you can use the open market to your advantage. But that's on you. And most of the clubs, their whole idea is to make one big transfer, and then that will change everything, and no more work goes into it. So for me, it's firstly the presentation from a professional point of view, making sure that you do everything that you need to do from your side. But then it's about making sure you are the best identifiers of talent. And that is always going to be the thing that will mark you out as a sustainable project, a club or academy or organization that will have success over an extended period, if you can identify talent quicker and better than anybody else.
Mm. I think that makes a lot of sense, Harry. And again, um, clubs
Look
stay.
how many legacy clubs in Africa, the biggest name in each country, and how few of the best players from that country have come through those programs. It's consistent that even though they have all of the influence, they have all of the resources, they aren't identifying the best players, and the players tend to be popping out of smaller clubs, or they're getting them right at the end of the development process. Maybe they get them for the last year or so. That shows that they're not doing their work well enough. That even though they have big reputations, they're not able to identify players as early as they should do. So for me, it's like it's across the board.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think there's definitely a need for like an immediate change. Stakeholders need to be very well informed and educated about that, and I think the experts in the various fields have to be given their due diligence and respect as well. From scouts, and having them, at least having them make feel valued in the organizations, and I think providing them resources, that would definitely be like a whole game changer. Just like you've said, how many people do you know or probably might be willing to make a 10-hour trip to a very remote village just to watch kids play in the street, right? And I've always said the best players are always coming from the most remote areas.
Of course, where the
Yeah.
need, where there is as you said, football is now a business, and we can discuss the merits and the disadvantages of that. But the reality is, if the sport has now become a business, and the people that have the biggest stake to be in it are people who are coming from an environment where they need to provide, where football might be their only avenue to support their family and their community. So it's not rocket science to think that that's where you're going to go and find talent. And
Absolutely.
unfortunately, as obvious as it is, people don't want to do the work. And I can tell you, from all of the different locations I've been to, all the different countries and showcases I've been to, I will constantly ask, if I'm going to see a U18 competition, can you bring the U14s? Can you bring the U10s as well? And they always look at me shocked, and they say, nobody ever asked for that. I say, well, that's, for me, is crazy, because if I'm not looking at under 14s in view of them being ready in a couple of years, then what am I doing? I'm not. There's
Yeah.
no
Cut
structure to it.
corners, cutting corners don't cut it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Harry, I think again, very insightful, and I hope the viewers definitely would enjoy this episode of it. I think this brings us to a close of the fourth episode of African Football Unfiltered. And again, we aim to bring you guys as much information as possible about the continent and the sport. And Harry has definitely been very, very, very insightful today. And we hope our viewers, stakeholders, and football lovers will refer to this episode for um, to actually have themselves educated about the problems that we're facing in the continent as a whole, and maybe at least that would get us motivated to do the right things as far as the sport is concerned. So Harry, if you have anything to say to close it up, we'll appreciate you giving your words out, and then from there, we hope to have you back on the or back on the podcasts in the very near future as well.
Well, yeah. Thank you again for inviting me on. It's been a great chat. I love the opportunity to speak. I try to be as candid and honest, because I'm the biggest advocate for football in Africa. I think it is the most exciting place on the planet for what the potential is, but I can't speak about it without speaking about the truth as well, because otherwise we're going to keep repeating the same patterns. For me, it's a call to action. There is so much potential here that if everybody involved in the football community in Africa starts to take it seriously, then we will really see what can be done. We can really, really see how Africa would dominate football in general.
I mean, I agree. So listen, this is a space, again, there's a reason it's called African Football Unfiltered. We're not about to sugarcoat anything. This is the space where we want the actual truth to be out to our listeners and viewers. We feel, and I feel and believe, that a lot of them have actually been blocked from getting the actual information that
For
they're
sure.
meant to get, to have them at least understand the dynamics and how to deliver, where it matters. So again, this is a safe space, and it's the right space to actually come as raw as possible, and then have people understand that this is what football is, and if we want to get the best out of it, if we want to get to the level that we're aiming to get at, then we need to be bashed with reality if that has to be the case. And this
For
is
sure.
just it. Obviously, I've always admired your interest in the continent's football. Always moving around, traveling around to East Africa. You've mentioned and told me stories about a lot of interesting players. And just 2 days ago, I came across a post um, about a post that was talking about Lazarus, the kid that you mentioned to me about almost a
Mhm.
year ago, and you told me he was going to go to Scandinavia. I think was it Sweden, and
Yeah.
that's Lazarus Peter. Started out obviously his career as a goalkeeper, and you can literally tell he's definitely um, one for the future. And I definitely hope he surpasses his potential, realizes.
Big talent, and a player like him going to Scandinavia now
Mm,
can be a catalyst for the whole of South Sudan. It
I
can
agree.
change the whole narrative about the country, and obviously everybody knows them for their prowess in basketball. but they also have a deep history of top footballers who
I agree.
haven't been given their opportunity. So I'm very excited for Lazarus because he's a great kid, and I hope he can start to break waves so that more players from his country can get their chance as well.
I agree, absolutely. So yeah, so I think it's only important that we have people like yourself in the continent, pioneering and then pushing through, and also obviously voicing out opinions and wherever it's needed and whenever it matters. So pretty much, I'll really appreciate having you on the podcast again in the very near future, Harry.
Awesome. I'll be
Uh,
happy to be back. All right,
Most
man.
definitely. I just want to thank you again for hopping on today and making the time. And obviously, we'll definitely try to see you very soon. And for the
Okay.
viewers, we appreciate you guys tuning in and stay tuned in as well. We hop on again next week, Sunday, with Mickey Adams,
Nice.
former Leicester City and former Leicester City head coach. And hopefully, we're able to touch upon other interesting topics. I've worked with him in Sierra Leone, and we've done some few other work as well. And so, pretty much, we will share our insights and experiences, within the continent, or at least the countries that we visited in Africa. So, till then, Harry, we definitely call it up for now, and we'll definitely have you on back here very soon.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, cheers, mate. Bye.
Cheers.